The idea of using a Crown Royal bag to make a face mask surfaced several weeks ago, and I was subsequently asked by a friend of ours who had 7 bags lying around to do this for him. When I looked online, I was unable to find any clear guidance on which pattern to use and how to construct and how to use the bags to the best advantage, so I proceeded to find my own way and decided that I would try my best to document that process for anyone who may wish to do similar. The first step was to find a template that would be appropriate to the size of the width of the bags, along with allowing the text to show in a prominent position. I went on the makemasks2020.org website, where there are a lot of various templates, and found the following one from craftpassion.com, which seemed like it would fit perfectly. I firstly cut out the pattern and made sure that I left the gap around the outside, because it states on there that a steam allowance is not included. Once cut out, I proceeded to make a prototype, and once that was sewn together into the shape of the mask, I wrote or transcribed the text from the bags onto my prototype so that I could work out the best positioning for the text to appear prominently. I tried it at this point initially and it was too low, it was disappearing under the chin, so I opted for this second higher level text. And then, in order to make sure that all of my pieces would be relatively consistent, I folded this piece of paper in half so that the creased line there would align with the bottom of the text. I had observed some variation as far as the width of bags go, so while I fully expected there to be some movement from side to side on the horizontal, I figured that this line would ensure that vertically everything was positioned very consistently between the masks. So then, with this pattern piece marked out, it was simply a case of proceeding with constructing a mask as you would normally do. As far as the process of cutting out the fabric pieces, I did do all of this retroactively. I didn't record any footage at the time, so please bear with me. The first thing I did was to follow that crease line on the template and ensure that it met the bottom of the text. Once I had that positioned, I proceeded to trace around the outside of the templates on all of the 7 bags, and then cut those text pieces out. The bags were then turned over, and I repeated this process on the back. So I was left with 2 pieces for each mask, one side with the text, one side without, both together sewn to form that front panel. Once these front 2 pieces were sewn together, I pressed them open over my tailor's ham to try to ensure the retention of as much of the curvature as possible. I did cut some notches out to help the fabric to take that curved shape. I then proceeded to cut out 2 pieces per mask out of a yellow to match the gold of the text, and that was to form the inside lining piece of the mask. Over at the sewing machine, I stitched the 2 pieces together on that front curved portion, just as I had done with the front facing. Then I pinned the front and back pieces together with the right sides facing in. I had the thought, before sewing the front and back together, to use the cord from the top of the bag to make small loops for the sides of the mask. It's important to think kind of inside out when you're forming these loops, because the whole thing is going to be turned inside out. So it's important to put the loops facing the middle of the mask on the inside between these 2 layers before you stitch around the outside, so that when you turn everything out, then those loops end up actually being on the outside, not on the inside. Here we have both layers pinned together with loops added and pinned in place facing the center of the mask. We are now ready to sew around the outside, but a word of warning. Make sure you leave one side open and unsewn, because this will have to flip inside out, and you will have no way to do this if you have stitched completely 100% around the outside. So I am leaving a gap here at the bottom. I will stitch around the outside except for this gap in the middle to allow me to be able to flip it right side out. Once the sewing had been finished and all of the pins had been removed, I could proceed with turning the whole thing right side out. It is useful to take a pair of scissors and very carefully clip the corners. The stitches must not be cut through, so you do have to take care. But this ensures that when you turn it right side out, you have very crisp corners. The corner fabric on the inside would bunch up in the corners otherwise, so it's a useful step just to try to have the highest quality end product. And you can see when turned right side out, the loops appear. And all that's left now is to seal up that gap at the bottom that we had used to flip the whole thing right side out. All that's left to do is to add elastic or cord ties to the loops so that you can attach it to your face. I want to briefly acknowledge that there are two ways that you could turn this right side out. The first one, as I showed you, was leaving the bottom open and stitching over top of that. The other way would be to leave the side open. Now, because you have these loops in place, you're going to have to be careful to make sure that they are stitched before turning the right side out. So you're going to want to start just on the inside of the one loop, go all the way around and finish just on the inside of the other loop, then flip right side out between those 2 points, and then finally top stitch all the way down, repeating on the other side so that it is even and appears the same on both sides. I have a final recommendation to make, and that would be that you knot the ends of the loops together, hammering them flat so that they don't bulge, just to ensure that they don't pull through. I did notice with a couple of the loops that they did separate and want to pull through, so I took this action to ensure that they were fixed.